is to be banned. At a press conference today, the group under the same sun said the current regulation of witch doctors was clearly not working. The attack occurred in the village of Gazuma in Simiyu province, just a remote rural area in the northwest of the country where there have been killings of albinos before. When we come back after the break on The World Today, we're up to a meeting holding in Ukraine between the government and pro-Russian separatists. Please join us again. Welcome back. It was supposed to be a day of peace talks in Ukraine as politicians and civil groups gathered to discuss how to curb pro-Russian rebellion in the east of the country. But that meeting nearly turned awry as the Kyiv government refused to let separatists take part in the meeting. The talks come at a tense moment for Kyiv. On Tuesday, 7 soldiers were killed in an ambush near the eastern city of Kramatorsk, the deadliest attack on security forces since they were sent to tackle the uprising in April.
Strained relations with Russia will not deter the European Union from making association agreements with countries such as Georgia, now scheduled to sign the agreement on June the 27th. European Council President Herman Van Rompuy said in Tbilisi on Wednesday, May the 14th. Georgia plans to sign the accord on strengthening ties with the EU, despite the fact that the prospect of Ukraine concluding a similar accord unleashed the crisis there. Van Rompuy, who represents the European Union's 28 national governments, traveled to the Ukraine on Monday, May the 12th, to discuss how to stabilize the situation there before the May the 25th presidential election. In Tbilisi, he said the European Union is committed to Ukraine's unity, sovereignty, independence and territorial integrity, and will respond with further sanctions against Russia if deemed necessary.
After the illegal annexation of Crimea and Sevastopol, the European Union has introduced sanctions against a number of individuals and entities. In case of further destabilization, the European Union remains committed to further increase the costs for Russia should it take more steps to destabilize the situation. For now, the immediate goal is to ensure free and fair presidential elections the 25th of May. The European Union will continue to insist on and the work for dialogue and negotiations, and this is the only way forward to come to a stable, democratic, inclusive and modern Ukraine.
Western countries are hoping the election will help stabilize the country. But Russia said last week it would be senseless to go ahead with the vote unless the Ukrainian government ended a military operation against separatists in the east and began a nationwide dialogue on constitutional reform. The EU has said it is willing to provide $15 billion in loans and grants to the Ukraine over several years to help get the shattered economy back on its feet. The upheaval in the Ukraine broke out after former pro-Russian President Viktor Yanukovych turned his back last year on an agreement on closer trade and political cooperation with the EU in favor of a $15 billion bailout from Russia. That sparked street protests that ended with him fleeing the Ukraine. Russian forces entered Georgian territory in August 2008. Moscow said it was an operation to protect people in the separatist territory of South Ossetia from attacks by Tbilisi's troops, while Georgia and its Western allies accused Russia of an act of aggression. Many Western politicians say Russia's intervention in Georgia was a dress rehearsal for Ukraine's Crimea Peninsula, which was annexed by Moscow after it sent in troops.
Well, joining me now is the VOA correspondent, Andre Denisnera. He joins us live via Skype. Andre, thank you for joining us on The World Today. Now, about that meeting they held in Kyiv today between the Kyiv government and the EU, it seemed to have planned Ukraine's economic future, but what about its politics?
Well, there is a meeting between the Ukrainian government's officials and local officials trying to basically resolve the situation and try to defuse the situation. So that is the political one. Unfortunately, it seems that the pro-separatist gunmen are not at the talks, present at the talks. So one wonders how far can one go if you have one of the major players not attending.
But how important is it that they attend the talks? Because from what we understand, they're totally against the government. They want to be on their own. They've declared self-rule. So how important is it that they're still part of these talks?
You still, if they are going to resolve the situation, you'd have to have them somehow involved in the talks. And that is for the Ukrainian government, which have basically said that these are terrorists and these are not some people we would like to have discussions with. So it's all up in the air right now. If you have a situation where you only have people talking to themselves about issues that they hope to resolve without a main player, I don't know how that's going to work.
But this is a region that wants to break away from Ukraine. This is a region that intends to have a referendum soon that would allow it to be annexed by Russia. And you're saying it's best to have them at the talks?
Well, what I'm saying is that it's true that they want to be associated with Russia, but again, the referendum is questionable because you really don't know. There were no international observers. It was some of the balloting was suspicious. So the referendum itself in both regions leaves a lot to be desired. So they can go and say, okay, we want to be annexed by Russia, or we're close to Russia. But it is very difficult from the international standpoint to basically believe that this is a legitimate and transparent referendum.
Just one last question, Andre, before you go. How possible is it that Ukraine will be able to hold presidential elections on May the 25th? What are the factors now militating against that happening?
That's a good question. Again, if you want to have a legitimate poll, and we're just very close to it, and on the 25th, it's practically around the corner, you have to set up all sorts of institutions, all sorts of transparency organizations, make sure that the ballots are correct, make sure that people don't vote 2 or 3 times as they did in some of the referendums. So it's going to be a tough call, and to have it done at a time when the country is in has all sorts of problems and issues, it's going to be a tough call.
Thanks a lot, Andre. Thank you for your insights. We know you'll be keeping an eye on that story for us. Andre Denisnera is the VOA correspondent. He's been monitoring what's been going on in Kiev. Now, it's been a very tough day in Turkey since last night. Rescuers have been searching desperately for scores of Turkish coal miners still missing after an explosion and a fire that caused a pit to collapse. So for now, the death toll stands at 238. Thankfully, dozens escaped the pit in the western town of Soma, but about 120 remain unaccounted for. On a visit to Soma, the Prime Minister Recep Erdogan promised that every aspect of the tragedy would be investigated and no stone would be left unturned.
Rescuers pulled more dead and injured from a coal mine in western Turkey on Wednesday, May 14, nearly 24 hours after an explosion, bringing the death toll to over 200 in what could become the nation's worst ever mining disaster. Hundreds more were still believed to be trapped in the mine in Soma, about 480 kilometers southwest of Istanbul. The explosion, which triggered a fire, occurred shortly after 3 p.m. local time on Tuesday. Energy Minister Tana Yildiz told reporters at the scene that the accident was likely to be the deadliest ever in Turkey. Yildiz said the fire was still burning on the ground, which miners said was hampering the rescue operation and denting hopes of finding more survivors. The blast happened during a shift change, leading to uncertainty over the exact numbers of miners trapped inside. Yildiz earlier said 787 workers were in the mine at the time and that the death toll may still rise further. Rescue workers pumped oxygen into the mine to try to keep those trapped by the blaze alive, as thousands of family members and co-workers gathered outside the town's hospital. Many of the dead had suffered carbon monoxide poisoning. Some 93 people were rescued, including several rescuers, and 85 of them were being treated for their injuries. Paramilitary police guarded the entrance to the mine to keep distressed relatives at a safe distance from the rescue effort. Prime Minister Tayyip Erdogan has declared 3 days of national mourning. The disaster highlighted Turkey's poor record on worker safety and drew renewed opposition calls for an inquiry into a drop in safety standards at previously state-run mines. The International Labour Organization ranked the EU candidate nation third worst in the world for workers' deaths in 2012.
Tension between the governments of Vietnam and China over the South China Sea is on a high, but it is the people who are reacting violently in the midst of the row. Earlier today, there were reports of several factories being set on fire at an industrial park in southern Vietnam. Thankfully, there were no casualties, but the police were able to make some arrests. The management of the Vietnam-Singapore Industrial Park, VSIP, said the protesters gathered on Monday in Tuan An, a town in the southern Binh Duong province. On Tuesday, they moved on to 2 industrial parks nearby and targeted factories owned or managed by the Chinese and Chinese expatriates. The protest came after China moved a drilling rig into waters claimed by Vietnam much earlier this month. So this is a story that's been trending on social media a couple of days now. I'm sure people are still interested in the latest on the Chibok abductions in Nigeria, but American celebrities Beyonce and JayZ retook the ratings. It's a video from a CCTV camera at a New York boutique hotel, purportedly showing rapper JayZ being attacked by his sister-in-law, R&B singer Solange Knowles, leaked to celebrity website TMZ. Well, in the video, Solange is seen charging and striking JayZ several times in an elevator. I suppose that video will be coming up anytime soon at the Standard Hotel in New York's Meatpacking District before being restrained. A Queen Bee seemed to avoid getting involved in the brawl. The hotel, venue for a post-gala party, promised to prosecute whoever was behind the recording, calling it a breach of security and guest confidentiality. I do apologize, it seems to have gotten the videos mixed up there, but we'll have that video up for you on our website. Thanks for watching The World Today. I am Amarachi Ubani. Sports News is up next.